fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Toys R Us over Jesus? What? Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again. Salt Strong Unchurched. This is going to be a hard-hitting one. This is going to be one that I believe is Christians, and maybe if you're not a Christian, you need to hear this. Maybe if you're thinking about becoming a Christian, or if you're on the fence, or used to be, whatever it is, this whole topic needs to be discussed, and in my opinion, brought to light. And I believe, honestly, we're kind of sabotaging Christ. Christians are sabotaging Christ more than anyone. And here's why I know that. Jesus hasn't changed. Jesus' promise has not changed, right? I mean, in our lifetime, none of those two things have changed. God's promise has not changed. The only thing that's truly changed is us as Christians and the way that we're treating people. And there's a whole point of this whole Toys R Us. I'm just going on a pedestal real quick. Here's what I believe happened. We stopped loving others the way that Jesus did. And I've really enjoyed watching this series. It's essentially a documentary movie called The Chosen. If you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. It's fantastic. You can watch a few of them. I think the first season on Amazon, for free if you have Amazon Prime. There's an app you could watch it. It's amazing. So it's called The Chosen, and it's so neat to see. And it's all biblically based. How Jesus loved. And he didn't just love the people like him, right? He was loving the people that were the sinners, that no one else wanted to be around, the prostitutes and the tax collectors and what we would consider bad people that we probably wouldn't invite over to our house for dinner. And yet he was eating with them. And the Pharisees and everyone else was ridiculing him for that. I mean, Jesus loved others that no one else would essentially love. And there's one saying that I believe would fix the whole world. It's so impossible for us to seem to do, and it's loving our neighbors as ourselves. We have stopped as Christians, especially here in America. I'm speaking for Americans because that's where I live and what I get to see. I believe we've stopped loving our neighbors as ourselves unless they look and talk and believe like us. And I've been guilty of this as well. I'm going to be 100% honest. And I catch myself as the good news. And there's a reason I'm doing these podcasts, as I shared with you last time. A lot of it's for my own sake, as a reminder, hey, we're called to love our neighbors as ourselves, regardless if they're Christian and regardless if they look and talk and even vote like us. This whole thing with Christians and how I've at least seen it, it's become just so political. And anytime someone disagrees, especially on social media, is one of the worst places where Christians just absolutely, like I said, sabotage Christ in general with the way they treat people and the way they're the opposite of loving. And it saddens me. And I remember, I won't name the name of this church, but I was listening to, it was a podcast that came up, and it was their church service, and it was during the whole abortion thing that happened. I guess it was early this year, late last year. I don't even remember at this point. But you know what I'm talking about, where they, reversed some stuff in the Supreme Court and a couple of states got involved. And I understand why they wanted to talk about it. And that was not a bad idea. But the way they presented it, I was disgusted. And I'm not a woman who's dealt through that just based on numbers. Right. And this is not about is abortion right or wrong. I please don't start getting angry with me. Right. Love me, even though and I think you're going to agree with what I'm saying. They didn't take it as, hey, here's what's right and wrong, and here's what we believe. They literally shamed anyone who ever had any part to do with an abortion. This is so in the past, and it doesn't help them. And as I was watching this sermon, my jaw is just dropped. I was like, they are not handling this the right way. They're literally going to, regardless if they thought it was right or not, that's it. It was horrible. It was done the worst possible way. And it was a massive, massive backfire. And they lost tons of people in their church. People, maybe some single moms and stuff that did something when they were 18. They made them feel horrible, like complete shame and horror. You know, when you hear about someone that says, yeah, the church offended me and they really drove me away, there was tons of women, I guarantee, and I saw it in the comments, so I know it happened. But this church just drove away tons of good Christians, people who are showing up to their church, taking the time out of their lives here in this busy age, and they drove them away because of the way they made them feel. They made them feel shameful. They made them feel horrible about themselves. And it was like putting a scarlet letter on anyone, even if they did it 30 years ago. The way they handled it was so pitiful, in my opinion. And it rubbed me the wrong way. I was just like, geez, is this what Christianity's like? Is make everyone feel horrible and guilty for anything that we've done in the past, or any sin that we've done in the past. It was, I don't know. So, and that's just one of a million reasons that I believe that we're sabotaging this stuff ourselves. And let me tie all this back in to the Toys R Us. And there is a big message here, and you're probably already guessing what it is about. Just truly loving other people, even if they don't 100% see the same as we do, because that's what Jesus did. That's what he wants us to do. Once again, his message, his promise, his vision has been the same. It has not changed. The only thing that has changed is us. And meaning we are the interpretation of what Christianity is. And so there was a post from this company, and it says you can only bring one back. And it was 4 things. So the post is you can only bring one back. Comment below on which one you want to bring back. So 1 was Toys R Us, 2 Blockbuster Video, 3 Radio Shack, and 4 Jesus. Okay? So you can only bring one back. Toys R Us, Blockbuster Video, Radio Shack, or Jesus. I started going through the comments, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's bad. And this is how society is. So 50 years ago, take the names out, and because obviously these companies were either still around or not born yet, but no one in their right mind would have publicly just denounced Jesus and talked trash on them. There was still this fear of, maybe even if I'm an atheist, I don't want to go out there and just have lightning strike me. But it's crazy how many people just completely bashed the thought of Jesus. I mean, one of the very first comments on here, well, 3 of them actually existed, so it's really a question of which one of those 3. And all these thumbs up of people liking this, that basically, saying the only 3 that really existed were the ones that were companies, that Jesus never did. And no one's even defending it. There are a few people who vote for Jesus in here, but by far and large, the Toys R Us was getting the most votes. And there was just as many people making fun of Jesus and making fun of Christians and how hateful Christians are. And just, it was horrible. It was gut-wrenching to read it all. But that was what really got me thinking. I was like, all right, well, what's happened here? Why and this is, I'm sure you guys can post or point to many posts just like this where the same thing happens, where the bandwagon, like meaning the majority of people, are commenting in a negative way and want nothing to do with Christianity. And so that begs that question, well, how did we get here? What happened? And if we can all agree that Jesus hasn't changed, right? The Bible hasn't changed. The message and the promise, and all of that is the exact same. The only thing, and you could also, I guess the other argument could be, well, these people changed. They've all got negative, but why is that, right? Once again, the promise hasn't changed. I believe it's the people. I mean, this one church in a small little town just offended who knows how many hundreds of people, if not tens of thousands of people on their little podcast. How many other churches have done the same thing? It's wild how many people send me great messages, and I love getting them about this unchurched. Like, yeah, it's just, you make me feel different than my church did that I left. And that's a shame. That is a crying shame that, yeah, I'm glad you're listening. I love the fact you're listening to Unchurched. I get a lot of joy doing this. I believe God's called me to this. Maybe it's to reach some of the people that have been hurt by churches. But to me, that's just like one of those gut-wrenching comments I get as well. Yeah, I listen to you because I don't want to go to church anymore because they offended me, or they said something about this and that, and ultimately just not loving. And that's my challenge to you, regardless of where you are in terms of your journey with Christ and with God. Regardless if you're an atheist, I still love you, because I believe, just based on what Jesus has told us, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to love on everyone and bring people closer. I know over the years that I've been doing this, meaning this unchurched. And over the years that I've been just trying to be as loving and not political and not looking at things through just my lens of, oh, well, they look different than me, or they vote differently than me, or think differently than me. They must be bad, and I don't like them. I'm trying to do just the opposite. And that Chosen movie, I'm just watching it. I watched the first season twice now, and it's so neat to see how patient and how loving Jesus is. And I believe he was like that in real life, just from all the stories I've read in the Bible. And I believe that's what he wants us to be like. And obviously, his disciples were trying to do it. It's tough for humans. I mean, that's kind of why we are where we are right now. It's tough for us not to get defensive, and they did, right? His disciples got in some trouble a few times. It's really tough not to get defensive when someone rips on the Savior, on Christ. And it's tough for me sometimes, but I believe we're supposed to bite our tongue and love on them to the point they get curious about, well, hey, man, nothing seems to bother, Jane or Betty or Mike or what, man, nothing ever seems to get to them. I kind of want that in my life, versus the comments you see on social media or someone just blowing up on you and being negative. Like, oh man, if that's what Christianity is, I don't want to be like that. And sadly, that's what's happened. Not to all Christians, as you know, I'm not pointing at everyone, but it's such a massive amount of Christians that so many people now have been turned off to the point they are willing to go out there and put something in writing that's out there for good, to denounce Christianity, to denounce Jesus. That never would have happened 50, 60 years, maybe even 30 years ago in our country. And once again, it's not just because there's more bad people. It's because we've turned so many people off. We've turned so many people away on how Christians have acted in general, and how we've made people feel. That's what it comes down to. And it's also running a company. It's the same thing. It's not always about money and how much someone makes at our company. What I found, it's usually when we lose someone, it's because of how we made them feel, that we didn't love on them enough, we didn't listen to them enough. That more often than not, it's been something around that. And that goes with anything in life, including religion and faith. It's how do we make others feel? And if they're not feeling great about the message that we're putting out there, and if they're not feeling great about what it means to be a Christian, because all they're seeing are just hypocritical people just pouncing on anything that doesn't look Christian. That's what's happening, by the way. That's a recipe for disaster for us. And so I'm hoping that you'll take me up on this challenge, and just, we'll never be perfect. And the good news is Jesus loves us even if we're not. But the more we can just be cognizant of loving on as many people as we can, regardless if they think the opposite of us, I believe we're going to have a spot in heaven for us, and we're going to be able to kind of turn the tide where you don't see comments like this. I mean, how cool would that have been? That same question, and you see 95% of people said Jesus. And that's what would have happened 40, 50 years ago. People would have been excited to have, right? And now it's just like, I don't know. It really, really bothered me reading through all these comments. There's hundreds of comments on this thing, by the way. I didn't read every single one, but I read enough to get the gist. It wasn't good. And Toys R Us was way more popular than Jesus. I mean, think about that. Golly, Jesus probably up there just shaking his head saying, children, what have you done? Why are you scaring away my flock? Ugh. All right, guys, that's it. I just wanted to share that with you. It hit me. It just happened seeing this post, and I was like, all right, I'm getting on the podcast. I'm gonna record about this. It's a good reminder for me just to be as loving as I can, and to not engage in the negativity, and just to be open-minded, have conversations with people that you don't necessarily agree with, and don't get in a fight about it. Say, yeah, man, that's interesting. I'm telling you, when you do that, the wildest thing happens is, because these people that let's just say think the opposite of you, or just anti-Christian, they think, because of what they've seen, that you're just going to fight back with them. Like, it's almost like they want to fight, and when you don't, they get more curious about it. I've been able to have that conversation and kind of have an open. It opened the door to talk about Jesus, just because I didn't fall into the fight that they wanted. Just loved on them. And it's crazy. Sometimes it's been people have come back to me for, months later, like, hey, remember that time? Like, I was kind of bugging you about this and you responded this way. Like, I kind of like to open up that conversation again. It's wild what happens. You just never know. So trust in God, be loving, love your neighbor as yourself, love like Jesus. I know it's really hard. It's tough for me, especially when I get people that I'm shaking my head saying, how do you think like this? But just try it. If we all just did that a little bit more, I believe things would be so much better in this country. And I'm looking forward to the time that we could post something like, hey, out of these 4, which one do you want to bring back? And everyone is just a resounding Jesus. That would be awesome. So love you guys. Hope you found this one helpful. Hit me up if you have any questions, thoughts, joe@saltstorm.com. Got a lot of really cool content coming here in the near future. And I hope to hear from you soon. Pow.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was passed down to me from the days ago. Find us on the water if there was a way. It's been said my papa, he wrote the book on catching big reds and 20-pound snook. I wish I knew all the things he knew today. For he's the reason why we are this way. And he put fishing in her soul.